What is up, my ninjas? I'm Strydent, and welcome to my review of the Amazing Spider-Man 2 Amazing Spider-Man figure by MAFEX. Now, this figure is another figure. I guess MAFEX just has this reputation these days that because there are issues sometimes with the manufacturing process, quality control, just like with everything. For some reason, people want to hate on them harder. I think it's because they're doing Marvel characters, and the Marvel zombies are harder on, Marvel properties being handled than just about anyone else. But I'm gonna set some of that shit straight because I didn't have those issues, and I think it's fair to, tell it how it truly is. It's unfair to, carte blanche just judge a company based on a few instances, So I'm gonna give you the good, the bad, and the ugly. Keep in mind, I didn't have the issues that a lot of people had. There are some things here because the figure isn't perfect, and that's not what I'm trying to get at. But I want to give it a fair shake, and I figure, this is a good enough time as any to do so. So sit back, relax, and you know the drill. So let's get this thing started. Sculpt and paint on this thing is phenomenal. Fucking phenomenal. The metallic paint on the reds and the kind of silverish color or glossy color on the webbing is just perfect. I have zero slop on this figure, even on the webbing. That's saying something. That means someone went through and somehow was able to, they programmed something to paint every single web, or they used a type of paint that was opposite to the red. It repelled the red paint to allow that color to show through. However they fucking did it, it looks amazing. No pun intended. The sculpt, unlike a lot of the other Spider-Man figures that we got, this is Andrew Garfield's, body type. He's long, he's lanky. It looks just like what we saw in the film. He even looks a little bit taller than traditionally what I would think of for Spider-Man, especially these days since he's a kid. So it's nice to see that someone paid attention enough to that and got it right. As far as posing him, and I'm going to get into this in more detail in the articulation section, the sculpt allows me, or anyone who has this figure, to have him assume poses that Spider-Man actually would assume. And that's the point. Why would you want a Spider-Man figure that can't do all the things, quote unquote, giant air quotes, that a spider can? That doesn't make any sense, So if you want him all twisted up McFarlane style, you can do that. If you want him, in cool, agile poses like Mark Bagley did, you can definitely do that. If you want him in the in-between like Eric Larson, you can do that too. So, there's a handful of criticisms that I've seen all across the internet when it comes to this figure, and a lot of them are unfair considering how well the figure works. Now, I will get to this even more in the articulation section, but his joints are not ratcheted. MAFEX doesn't do that, at least not with these standard figures. I don't know how they did with the Hulkbuster or something, because I'm pretty sure they did a Hulkbuster or some large-scale robot type deal. But you can get the poses that you want. He will hold them once you figure out how to position him so that gravity does the rest of the work. And in conjunction with the stand, this is a masterpiece. I had no issues posing this guy, and I love every single little thing. I even was watching the film while I was doing this review so that I could get him in some of the poses that are, indicative of what we saw in the film. And it worked. You know what I mean? So some of the shit that I heard people say about this figure, I think is unfair and unrealistic. And yeah, judge for yourself, because I think results may vary from figure to figure. But mine is great. Accessories are pretty light because this is the standard version. They also did a deluxe version that, like a special edition. As you can see, this special edition or DX version comes with a lot, and it goes for a pretty penny. It also comes with an Andrew Garfield head and an unmasked, like a mask that you can hold as a prop. I wanted it, but I could never find it for a good price. And then when I got this one, I couldn't even find this set at all. So, I worked with what I could find. So the version I have is just the basic And I mean, honestly, if you have any other Spider-Man figures, you really don't need that much more. You've got the thwip hands, you've got the whole web holding things hands, you've got fists so you can pummel stuff, and you've got splayed open hands. Two different sets. Well, the wall crawling variety and just the standard kind of relaxed, which is what I have on the figure right now. And then you have these web pieces, you know, the pieces that go around his wrist so that you can have him spray webs. And then you have a web that he can actually hold on to. And I love how they did it. It's just, you know, pliable enough that he can swing on them and it doesn't feel like it's going to break. Now, the detailing on these are awesome. There is a flaw with them, and I'm sure you guys can see it, and it has to do with time, but I will get into that in the nitpicks and issues section. But you can see he's got the relaxed hands on. These things, just the paint on these, is just phenomenal. Phenomenal paint. The fact that so many people they spend so much time dissing the articulation and stuff, it's just kind of dumb. And then, of course, there's the stand. I love this stand. I really don't have any criticisms with it. It's just, it comes with the best, you know, stuff that a basic Spider-Man could come with. It's almost standard at this point. Okay, articulation. So I'm doing this the old school way, but I'm switching things up by just posing him in Spider-Man poses so you can get the gist. I don't need to go through. He has a, you know, his head can turn, he can look up, he can look down, blah, blah, blah. You can tell just by how twisted up he's going to get that he can do the things you need him to do as a Spider-Man figure. And with the release of the Revoltech Yamaguchi Amazing Spider-Man figure, a lot of people are like, it's so dynamic and it's so whatever because it's got more of a stylized sculpt. But they're not putting their Spider-Man figures that they already have in the kind of poses that they could put that one in, regardless of whether or not they can do it. So as you can see, he can do it. He can be put in those kind of dynamic poses. You can twist him up. You can have him swinging. You can have him, you know, punching and kicking like 10 people, 3 people at the same time, whatever. Stuff that you see him do, you know, a lot of the cool foreshortened poses where, you know, one hand or one foot is close to the camera or the viewer and, you know, his body's getting smaller as it goes back. You can do all that stuff. You can also do the standard Spider-Man swinging through the city type poses like you see here, like we've seen in all the games and all the movies. You can do all of the you know, hanging poses, all that kind of stuff he can do. So you understand that he has anatomically correct swivels. Unlike Wonder Woman, though, he does have a standard bicep swivel, but he still has the swivel in his shoulder anatomically correct. Now, this is my favorite thing here. When a Spider-Man can actually stoop in a Spider-Man pose, you know, squat the way Spider-Man does, that makes me happy because that means that the joints and the proportions of the legs to the body and the arms to the torso, they're all right. A lot of people don't seem to get that this is necessary, you know? When I did the review of the Pizza Spider-Man that everyone is going ape shit for, he couldn't do this. He couldn't do it. You have to do so much. You have to ignore so much for this to be possible. But then you go back a few years or a year or so, 2 years or something like that for the Amazing Spider-Man 2 figure that Hasbro also did. He had better proportions, so his squat looked more natural. And then every other Spider-Man before that could do this with no problem. So, yeah, this guy is articulated to the gills, which is awesome, you know? It makes sense because he's a Spider-Man figure. That is his gimmick. That is his power. You need to be able to do, you know, agile things with him pose-wise. So this is a complete S-class when it comes to his articulation. And anyone who says otherwise just does not know because they don't really handle their figures right. All right, so let's compare. As you can see, I have him standing next to the other Amazing Spider-Man 2 figure that I have. I used to have the Marvel Select one. I sold it. He wasn't as posable as I wanted, and he had those weird wide joints. But these two here, like you're seeing the poses. I mean, essentially, it would come down to which one you could afford. I paid about $40 for this Amazing Spider-Man 2 MAFEX figure. And then, of course, the Hasbro one was $20. So if you can find either of them, which I think the Hasbro one now is more expensive, but if you can find either of them, you're not really doing yourself a disservice. But as you can see, detail-wise, the MAFEX one puts the Hasbro one to shame. Instead of having etched webbing, he has embossed webbing like he's supposed to. And the webbing is actually painted a silverish, like a dark, almost gunmetal color. And then he's got the reflective, more, metallic red on him. But, his joints, his proportions, he's skinny. He's supposed to be skinny. He's not supposed to have comic book bulging muscles in his legs and shit. Because that's not what Andrew Garfield looked like. Even the shape of his feet, it's incorrect on the Hasbro one. They did a lot of things that are kind of like bridging the gap between the two. It's like kind of comic, kind of Marvel versus Capcom, but not so much the film. Whereas the MAFEX is film accurate, I was happy to see this, So, Akiva Red, as usual, has popped in to, point out which one is the better of the two as far as what you're getting for the money. Now, you already know imports don't really compare, but in this case, Hasbro did such a good job getting the essence of the character down that I had to put them next to each other because to me, that is Hasbro. The other one is Hasbro's best full-size, like adult Spider-Man to me. People like the McFarlane one. I think that one's better. But in terms of Spider-Mans in general, I like this one the best so far. The Revoltech one looks awesome. I got to see how tall he is compared to other stuff, but not for no $85 when this exists. Like, yeah, no. So, if you're a smart collector, go for this or the Hasbro one. I can't believe I'm actually saying that, but, this here is a better figure for the money. $80 for a Spider-Man figure doesn't make any damn sense. So anyway, props to them here. Okay, so my issue, it's real simple. Over time, the paint starts to lose color. Now you can see it's a little more pink here, and it's not as red as the body. And I don't know if it's that one was stored, because I put all my accessories in a bag in a big old Tupperware box or a Rubbermaid box. And typically no light is hitting them. I don't have them in direct sunlight. They're kind of on a shelf out of the way. But it's possible sunlight could have hit them from an angle, and maybe that's what does that over time. But I've only had this figure for less than a year. I got him last year towards the end of the year, like fall. So maybe the end of summer. So it's right before fall. So there's no reason why this should be losing the color like that so much. I don't know. I don't think he's a bootleg. He came in the package. The package was legit. Everything was there. So I don't know. You know what I'm saying? That's my experience. Some people have said, though, that the joints, that's their big thing. The joints don't hold. Mine, as you see in those pictures, I'm not using anything extra to get the joints to hold up. I didn't take anything apart, nothing. I just took him out of the package, posed him. I've been posing him since last year. I just finally got to doing this review today. So, the pictures I took ever since ago. But anyway, you can kind of see the discoloration there. But that's my only nitpick, my only issue. And of course, it's time for the bottom line. The bottom line is this is a pretty good figure. It's better than pretty good. It's a really good figure that does not get the props it deserves because of quality control. Now, with the kind of, there are Facebook pages dedicated to the quality control issues of Marvel Legends. So, quality control is not something that any line, any company is 100% immune to. You can have those issues. I think at this point, there's enough of these figures out there that you can get one that is not jacked up. Now, sometimes people say that the joints suck and the blah, blah, blah because they manhandle the hell out of their figures. If you don't manhandle your figures, chances are it will last and it won't fall apart. Import figures tend to be a little bit more fragile than domestic figures because domestic figures are made for kids. But import figures are made with collectors and otakus in mind, and they know that they're gonna, treat this thing with kid gloves because of the price that you paid. Granted, it's not as expensive in the country of origin. So if you're that kind of collector, get this. If not, get the Hasbro version. Call it a day. End of story. This figure has superior paint, superior articulation, superior accessories, actually. And the sculpt itself is just so on point that you just have to be an idiot to be like, nah, that doesn't work for me. It doesn't look like Spider-Man. This was the best movie suit that we ever got. And I think, well, the most comic book accurate movie suit that we've ever gotten. I think it deserves your attention. So if you see this figure for about 40 bucks, maybe even 50 bucks, I think it's worth it. If you see the DX version, definitely get it if it's a reasonable price. You will not be disappointed. For all the stuff that this figure can do, any shortcomings could easily be overlooked, as long as the figure doesn't fall apart in your hands. So this has been my look at the MAFEX Amazing Spider-Man 2 Spider-Man figure. I think it is S-Class stuff. If you see this figure, pick it up. You will not be sorry. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Peace outside. Thank you for watching my video. If you enjoyed what you saw, please give it a like, a share, let your friends know. Check me out on social media. All the links are in the description. And if you really want to help me out big time, jump on Patreon and support the channel. Every little bit helps, the smallest amount to the largest amount. And last but not least, check out my comic, War of the Gods. Issue 2 is on sale now on Indie Planet, and the links are in the description. It's some superhero fun, and as a smaller independent book, it needs all the views, all the eyes on it as possible. So check it out, show it to your friends. Every view helps greatly. And yeah, that's it for me. Thanks again.